Hey guys, Luke on Sean's channel. Today I'm really excited to bring you guys a brand new deck. This is Yubel. I have a love-hate relationship with this deck. I love to play it, yet I hate losing to it. Overall, I'm very happy with the support Yubel got from Phantom Nightmare. I think it's a really cool deck, and also it's quite budget friendly. Besides the fusion that went up by a lot, this deck is relatively inexpensive to make. A lot of fun to play. I would imagine that it has some competitive viability. So without further ado, let's not beat around the bush, let's get straight into Yubel. Starting things off, you only run one copy of Yubel. Yubel is the namesake of the deck. You only need to run it at one, definitely don't run it anymore. For those of you who don't know the gimmick of Yubel, Yubel basically relies on a bunch of zero attack, zero defense fiends, and what these fiends do is that they all have the ability that when your opponent attacks into them, you take no damage from that attack, the damage is instead inflicted onto your opponent instead. If Yubel is destroyed, except by its own effect, you can special summon Yubel Terror Incarnate from your hand, deck, or graveyard. The reason why the condition says when it's destroyed except by its own effect is that Yubel actually has a maintenance cost. During the end phase, Yubel either needs to destroy one monster that you control or else destroy herself in order to keep her on the field. But considering that the support that we got around this deck from Phantom Nightmare, Yubel isn't even like the main boss monster for this build anymore. She's still really good, but we only need one copy for her in the deck. So definitely just run it at one. Of course, the monster that Yubel brings out when she's destroyed is Yubel Terror Incarnate. Terror Incarnate pretty much has the same effect, where this card cannot be destroyed in battle, and also you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. Your opponent is the one that takes the damage instead. Although Yubel can be normal summoner set, Yubel Terror Incarnate cannot be normal summoner set. It actually must be special summoned after the effect of Yubel. Reason why Terror Incarnate is better than Yubel is because it doesn't have the maintenance cost of destroying one other monster or else itself during the end phase. What he has instead is that during the end phase, destroy all other monsters on the field, which is a really good non-targeting board wipe. If Terror Incarnate is destroyed, you can actually special summon one Yubel, the Ultimate Nightmare, from your hand, deck, or graveyard. However, this deck is very tight for space, and most of the time if you bring out Terror Incarnate, the game is pretty much over, so we actually do not run Yubel, the Ultimate Nightmare, in this build. So one copy of Terror Incarnate. Probably the best bit of support we got from Phantom Nightmare for this deck is Spirit of Yubel. Spirit of Yubel is very good. She also cannot be destroyed in battle, and also battles involving her, it doesn't inflict damage to you, it inflicts damage to your opponent instead. But Spirit of Yubel has a bunch of other effects that make her really good. If she's destroyed, you can actually special summon a Yubel from your banish zone, your hand, deck, or graveyard, which is really good. It's why we run the one copy Yubel, because you can pretty much use Spirit Yubel to summon her from anywhere, including the banish zone is really good and important. Meaning if Yubel is DD crowed, it really doesn't matter, Spirit Yubel can still bring her back out. Also, Spirit Yubel has the effects that when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can actually special summon this card from your hand, which is really good. It's kind of like Battle Failure in a way, however, you can still control monsters and use Spirit Yubel to bring it right out. Which of course is really good, considering that Spirit Yubel and all the other Yubel monsters are level 10s, really hard to get out. The fact that Spirit Yubel is able to just bring itself out on an attack declaration is really good, and it can be very unexpected for your opponent. But not only that, if this card is special summoned, you can either add to your hand or set one spell or trap from your deck that mentions Yubel. Most of the time it's going to be your Nightmare Pain, or sometimes it'll be your Eternal Favorite. And the good thing about this effect is, although you can add to your hand, you can use the option to set it instead. Reason why that's so good is because it's a good way of playing around draw, which I really like for the deck. So I definitely recommend running 3 copies of Spirit Yubel. Very important. I run 1 copy of Geistgrinder Golem. In the other profiles I've seen, not a lot of people actually play him, but I actually do think that it is quite a good card to play. Reason why I say that is because Geistgrinder Golem, you can only special summon it once per turn to your opponent's side of the field. And how you do that is by its own effect. His effect reads that you can reveal one Yubel monster in your hand, special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field, and then you can special summon the revealed monster to the field. Reason why that's really good is because it specifically says, and then you can special summon that monster you revealed, meaning that if you're kind of stuck where you really want to get Geistgrinder Golem up, but you only have Terror Incarnate in your hand, since Terror Incarnate cannot be normal summoned or special summoned except by the effect of Yubel, you can still reveal Terror Incarnate and get Geistgrinder Golem to your opponent's side of the field. That way, when your opponent is going into their turn and declares an attack with Geistgrinder Golem, if you have Spirit Yubel in your hand, you're able to just special summon it out, as we mentioned earlier. So I still really think that Geistgrinder Golem is really good for that effect. Also because if you're in a situation where you have Geistgrinder Golem and Spirit of Yubel in your hand, The fact that you're able to just reveal Spirit of Yubel, summon the Geist Grinder Golem and that Spirit of Yubel is a really, really good way to start off your combo. See, the whole point of Yubel is that it needs to be attacked by big monsters in order for your opponent to take the damage. So you do want to see big monsters on your opponent's side of the field as often as possible. So if your opponent is playing a deck that only relies on very small monsters, the game can kind of drag on and be a bit difficult to win. So being able to get a big 3000 attack body onto your opponent's side of the field in order for it to attack Yubel is just really, really good. Geist Grinder Golem also has a revival effect that if you special summon Yubel while this card's in the graveyard, you can actually special summon this card to your opponent's side of the field, which is really, really good if we're planning on attacking on our turn. Geist Grinder Golem also has a really funny effect that if this card battles a Yubel monster, your opponent gains 3000 life points, i.e. we gain the 3000 life points if our Yubel monster battles into him, which I just think is really, really funny. Really cool way to win for time as well. So Geist Grinder Golem, I find running out one, it definitely, I think it serves the right purpose in the deck. If you don't want to run it, that's fine, but this deck is still 40 cards, so this is a ratio that I recommend you play. We run 3 copies of Samsara the Lotus. This is pretty much the combo starter of the deck in order to get our Yubel monsters to really pop off. Has the effect, you contribute this card, special summon Yubel monster from your deck, which is really, really good because we're able to really good because since it says a Yubel monster, you're able to special summon the Spirit of Yubel and really pop off from there. But not only that, Samsara the Lotus has a few other effects. During your opponent's turn, when a monster effect is activated while you control a Yubel monster, you can quick effect, tribute this card. The activated effect becomes destroy one Yubel monster on the field, which is really, really good because if that's just a regular Yubel, we're able to go into Terror Incarnate, or even if that's just Spirit of Yubel, we're able to go into Yubel. But also during the end phase, if you control Yubel and this card is in the graveyard, you can add this card to your hand or you can special summon it. The reason why this is so good is that Lotus is able to bring itself out if Yubel is on the field, and then Lotus works as the fodder for the maintenance cost Yubel has to pay. So if you end on an end board with just Yubel and Lotus in the graveyard, you know that the fact that's coming, Yubel has to pay maintenance costs, so Lotus is able to bring itself out, Yubel tribute to Lotus, so you still get to keep your Yubel, which is really, really good for the build. So definitely maximize Samsara the Lotus in this build. Just a little extender, Dark Beckoning Beast is really, really good. We have a small Unchained package, so having as many fiends as we can is really, really good. And also Dark Beckoning Beast works well for consistency, mainly because it has the effect that during the main phase you can normal summon one fiend monster with 0 attack and defense in addition to your normal summoner set. I.e. you summon Dark Beckoning Beast and then you're also able to summon Samsara the Lotus after it as well. So just as a small extension and also just filling out the 40 cards with consistency, 2 copies of Dark Beckoning Beasts. We run a small Unchained package in this build as well, so Unchained Soul of Farvara, Unchained Soul of Shyama is also really, really good to have in this deck. The Unchained package is very, very small. These cards kind of just work as a small little package. It's not really a big part of the deck to have the Unchained stuff. I just really, really like it. I think it's a cool tech option, so that's why I only run 1 copy of each. If you guys want to cut that out, that's absolutely fine, but I do think it's definitely worth it, especially when you see what the Unchained monster from the extra deck can do. Tour Guide of the Underworld here, of course, is there for the Unchained package also. The only target Tour Guide can summon off its effect is itself, so normal summon Tour Guide, special summon our Tour Guide from the deck. Reason why that is actually really, really good is because it's 2 fiends on the field in order for us to link summon into our Unchained Soul Lord of Yama, which is really, really good to kick off our Unchained engine in the build. So 3 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld. 3 copies of Ash Blossom, it's most universal hand trap. I never like to go a deck without it. Nibiru is not only just a really, really good hand trap, especially when it's going against combo decks, but also the reason why it has really good synergy with this build in particular is because Nibiru summons a very, very big token onto your opponent's side of the field, which can be quite relevant because if your opponent's really popping off and has a big board and you out that big board with Nibiru, it has a really, really big token in terms of attack and defense. A lot of people summon that token into defense position. However, if we're in a situation where we're actually going second and we've managed to Nibiru our opponent, we might be able to have that token be in attack position for a really, really high attack. And if we use our Yubel monsters to attack into it, there's a very good chance that we can OTK our opponent right there on the spot. That's why I definitely recommend running Nibiru in the main deck and not just as a side deck option. I definitely think this deck can really benefit off of Nibiru. So 3 copies of it in the main, I highly recommend it. This can be sided out depending on what the matchup is, but better to have it game 1 than to have not. Going into the spells now, 3 copies of Nightmare Pain. What I really love about these GX decks, just like Crystal Beasts, in order to make the deck really crazy and broken, they just add a continuous spell that has like 20 effects. Which, hey, I'm not complaining, it's great. I think Cyber Dragons should have a continuous spell like that. But anyways, Nightmare Pain is really good. During your main phase, you can throw one Dark Monster on the field or in your hand, and if you do, add one Yubel or one card that mentions it from your deck to your hand, except for Nightmare Pain. You can only use the effects of Nightmare Pain once per turn. While you control a Yubel monster, your opponent's monster that can attack must attack Yubel monsters, which is really good. Your opponent can't just skip their battle phase if Nightmare Pain's up and you have Yubel on the field. They actually have to attack into your Yubel monster, which is a really good way of kind of slowing down your opponent. It'll make them think twice about how many monsters they want to bring out onto the field. And also, if they're aware about this and they know they're going to get a lot of damage, they might start summoning their monster in defense position, which can be annoying for us, but it's still really good to kind of slow down our opponent and kind of stop them in the middle of their tracks. It specifically says your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving your Yubel monsters. So I definitely recommend Nightmare Pain at 3 copies. It's the main thing we search off of Spirit of Yubel when we get her effects to kick off. So 3 copies, absolutely essential for this build. 2 copies of Opening the Spirit Gates, I just think it's really good. Again, it's filling out the 40 card deck. It works as consistency because it's able to search our Dark Beckoning Beast, and vice versa. Dark Beckoning Beast, when it's summoned, is actually able to search or open the Spirit Gates, which is really good for thinning the deck a lot more. So 2 copies of Opening the Spirit Gates. 1 copy of 1-for-1. We really want to see our Samara the Lotus as quickly as possible because it is the best combo starter of the deck. So 1-for-1, it's a good way to special summon out onto the field. I definitely recommend it. 2 copies of Super Poly. The reason why it's only 2 copies, not the full playset, is because we have another card in this deck, Eternal Favorite, that also has a Super Poly-like effect anyways. So only 2 copies is more than enough. It's able to absolutely annihilate boards with this build, especially with Yubel, the Loving Defender, being able to use Yubel and any effect monster on the field at all. Go into it. It's really good for board wipes. I can't recommend playing it enough. There's definitely an argument to run at 3, but considering that I run 2 copies of Eternal Favorite means I'm able to make room for some other stuff, so only 2 copies of Super Poly is all you really need. 1 Call by the Grave. This deck can be kind of in the combo line, so we don't want to be interrupted. Call by the Grave is definitely really good at helping our plays go through. 3 copies of Pot Prosperity. It's just really good for consistency. Definitely the best pot card in the game right now, so I definitely recommend running it at 3. Moving on to the traps, we run 2 copies of Eternal Favorite. Eternal Favorite is the card I mentioned earlier that has a Super Poly effect, but there's not only that to the card. The card is actually searchable off of Spirit Yubel because it mentions Yubel in the text. Once per turn, you can only activate 1 of these effects of Eternal Favorite. First one being special summon one of your Yubel monsters that is banished or in your graveyard, and neither players can activate cards or effects when that monster is special summoned. But also as a second effect is a Super Poly effect, where if you control Yubel, you can discard 1 card and send its face-up card to the graveyard. Fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either field as material, including a Yubel monster, which is really good for going for Yubel, the Loving Defender. But not only that, some might think that this is a continuous trap that can kind of die to Ghost Ogre. But considering if you're using the Super Poly effect, the cost of the card is discarding 1 card and sending the face-up card from field to the graveyard. So that effect actually does not die to Ghost Ogre, which is really important ruling to know. So 2 copies of Eternal Favorite, definitely essential for the build. 1 copy of Abominable Chamber of the Unchained. Again, the Unchained package is very small in this build, but I do rather run it than not. So it's good to have a trap card we're able to search off of our Unchained main deck monsters. And finally, round things off, 3 copies of Imperm. Just a very good hand trap, and also is good setting going second as well. Definitely recommend running a 3, and that rounds off the 40 card deck. Going into the extra deck now, we run 2 copies of Yubel, the Loving Defender. This is a really good card. Great Super Poly target. You're also able to use your Eternal Favorite to go into her. It simply needs 1 Yubel monster and 1 plus effect monster on the field. I mean, if you have a Yubel monster on your side of the field and your opponent has like a big board full of monsters, you're able to completely wipe them off in order to go into this monster. If this card is fusion summoned, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each material used, which i.e. is just really good for time. And then you can only use this effect of Yubel, Loving Defender, once per turn. She cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. At the end of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that opponent's monster attack and if you do, banish that monster. Pretty much has the same effect of all the other Yubel cards, but the fact it's able to banish the monster directly after really proves the superiority of this Yubel monster. I definitely recommend running it at 2. That card went up a lot in price recently, so even if you want to just run it at 1, that's absolutely fine. But at least 2 is ideal for the build. We also run our Super Poly targets. We run our Mud Dragon to the Swamp, Garara, and Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. You guys already know what these guys do. If you played any deck ever that plays Super Poly, you already know the purpose of all these 3 cards. You don't need me to explain them. So just know that you run it at 1 copy each. We run 1 Xyz, and that's Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. It takes 2 level 10 monsters in order to go into, which i.e. Spirit of Yubel and Yubel are both level 10, so you're able to overlay them to go into the Gustav Max. And it just has the effect of once per turn, detach 1 material from this card, inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent. Which is really, really good. Most big monsters that your opponent sets up have 3,000 attack. If it's Barone, I'll use Barone as an example. So say we're in a situation where your opponent has Barone on the field and you actually have 2 of your Yubel monsters, Spirit of Yubel and Yubel on the field. What you're able to do is you're able to attack with Yubel, your opponent will take 3,000, attack with Spirit of Yubel, your opponent will take another 3,000. That's 6,000 life point damage and leaving them only with 2,000 left. Then when we're going into main phase 2, we can simply just overlay those 2 Yubel monsters for Gustav Max, activate the effect to inflict the final 2k damage and just win the game right there on the spot. So although it may not come up all the time, it can be really satisfying to end the game as quickly as you can with that. So 1 copy of Gustav Max I think is really, really good for the deck. 1 copy of Linkuriboh, if we get interrupted and our Smarter Lotus is just negated on the field, the fact that we're able to kind of like defend a little bit with Linkuriboh I find to be very, very good. So 1 copy of Linkuriboh in the build. Unchained Soul, Lord of Yama, really, really good. It just takes 2 Fiend monsters in order to go into her. Most of the time it's going to be your tour guide from the underworld. If she's special summoned, you can add 1 Unchained monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. If this card you control destroy a battle or card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, special summon 1 Fiend monster from your hand or graveyard, then you can destroy 1 card you control. Which is really, really good if we're going into the grind game and we need to special summon out some of our Fiend monsters have been destroyed. So Unchained Soul Lord of Yama is really, really good for the build. It's also good for link climbing if we're going into our Unchained Soul of Rage, because Unchained Soul of Rage needs 2 monsters including an Unchained Soul monster. And we mainly have it for the effect that during your opponent's main phase you can quick effect. Target 1 face of special summon monster that your opponent controls. Immediately after this effect resolves, link summon 1 Dark Link monster by using only that opponent's monster and discard its material. Which of course is really, really good. It also has a secondary effect that if this card in the field destroy a battle or card effect, you can target 1 Fiend monster in your graveyard except for itself and add it to your hand, which is really, really good. But that first effect is really, really good because we're able to use our opponent's monsters to link climb for Unchained Soul of Anguish, who essentially has very similar effects to the Soul of Rage. We're able to use Anguish in order to link climb into our Unchained Abomination, which is a really, really good destructive boss monster that we can kind of use as an alternative win condition for this deck. That concludes all the Unchained monsters in the build. That's pretty much the whole package. So you can see it is very, very tight, but considering the power that these monsters have, it is definitely worth the run. So that's the ratio I recommend you run in the build. 1 copy of Dark to Dark Charmer Gloomy. Pretty much the whole deck is dark monsters, so we're able to go into them no problem at all. If your opponent has a very powerful dark monster in their graveyard, you kind of want to steal. Dark is a good way to kind of steal that out. But not only that, if Dark is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect, you're able to search 1 dark monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck, which is essentially our whole card pool. So 1 copy of Dark. I recommend the 2 staple Nightmare cards, Nightmare Unicorn and Nightmare Phoenix. These are both very, very good. Unicorn is able to shuffle the card back into the deck, and Phoenix kind of works as a spell and trap card pop, which is really, really good considering we don't really main deck any big heavy spell / trap card removal. So Phoenix is really, really good for that. But not only that, Unicorn is also a link tree, and rounding off the build, we run 1 copy of Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker is just a really, really powerful link monster. You guys probably already know what he does, so you don't need me to explain it again. But much like Unchained Abomination, it is a really, really good alternative win condition for this build that I definitely recommend you run. So those are the ratios that round off the extra deck. Going into the side deck now, we run 3 copies of Thunder King the Lightning Kaiju. I was definitely torn between this guy and Lava Golem, but the reason why I settled on this guy eventually is that Lava Golem must be summoned by attributing 2 monsters, whereas Thunder King the Lightning Strike Kaiju only needs the 1 monster. And sometimes all our opponent can really set up is just the 1 monster, probably an SP Little Knight or a Barone on the field. So we're able to take care of those problems with just the 1 Kaiju is definitely better off. And also, it's very important that you use a kaiju with very, very high attack stats, because if we attack into it with our Yubel, it's better to have the bigger damage inflicted into your opponent. So Thunder King is really, really good. Big 3300 attack kaiju, pretty much essential for the side deck. I run 3 copies of Lancia. Reason why I went with Lancia is because last time I was at locals, although I wasn't playing this deck, I was playing against a runic deck. And runic decks can kind of be a problem. They're just really, really annoying. So we're able to shut down our opponent from banishing any of our cards. It could be really, really good. Also, the fact that Cash is also a big deck this format, I think Lancia is just really, really good at shutting down a lot of decks that banish a lot. So I think it's a good side deck option. Not necessarily the best side deck option if you want to change it out with something else, but just based on previous experience, I think Lancia will come in handy a lot more frequently than one might assume. 3 copies of Ghostbelle. I actually used to main deck this, but then I understood the absolute powerhouse of Nibiru synergy with the deck. But Ghostbelle is still really, really good at hand trap this format, especially because Fire King and Snake Eyes rely heavily on the graveyard. I think if we're able to disrupt any graveyard plays with Ghostbelle, it's definitely for the best. So 3 copies of Ghostbelle in the side deck, I definitely recommend that. 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Cosmic Cyclone should be huge this format, mostly because Snake Eyes spells, they set themselves first before they activate for their effects. So there's a brief window if your opponent activates Diabellstar and sets a Snake Eye spell, you're able to Cosmic it right away so they don't get the chance to activate it. Also, it's just really, really good spell and trap removal. So I definitely recommend Cosmic Cyclone for this format. Being the good cards for this format, 3 copies of Royal Decree. Labyrinth is really, really crazy, so having Royal Decree completely shuts down the deck. Royal Decree, continuous trap card, has the effect simply stating negate all other trap effects on the field. So I find it really good if you're going against Labyrinth, and also some of the other road decks like Trap Tricks can also suffer from this card as well. So 3 copies of it, definitely really, really good side deck option. So that does it for the build. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. I think Yubel is definitely a very, very good, strong rogue deck. Also the fact that it's somewhat budget if you're discounting the fusion monster. So this deck can really do well in tournaments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel because we have plenty more content on the way. Thanks for watching.